This time on Sound Off Sports, we're asking, should Jackson Arnold or Alex Orji be the starting quarterback for the UNLV Rebels? We're breaking it all down. Let's go. SOS starts right now.
Make some noise. This is Sound Off Sports, sponsored by Silver State Schools Credit Union.
Welcome into this brand new edition of SOS or Sound Off Sports. I'm Mike Davis, joined by always my main man, James Everett Barrapin, the fourth. James,
what's going on?
Big show today.
Real big show.
Getting ready. It's week 0 on Saturday for UNLV football as they take on the Memphis Tigers. Crazy thing is, ahead of week 0, game 1, Saturday at Allegiant Stadium, there is still no word on who is the starting quarterback for this football team. Dan Mullen not making any announcement, not committing to one guy. It's right now between two names. Jackson Arnold, the guy who transferred from Auburn, was originally with the Oklahoma Sooners, and of course, Alex Orji, a guy who got hurt in week 3 last year, season ended, but 2 years ago won a national championship with Jim Harbaugh and Michigan with the Wolverines. So, I have a lot of thoughts, James, on who should be the starting quarterback. We also have the thoughts of some people from home that we're going to be getting to. But let me make my point right off the top. So Jackson Arnold, this guy, he won every accolade you could win as a high school quarterback when he played in Texas, the heartland of of high school football. This guy not only was a 5-star recruit, a top 25 player in the country, he was also the Gatorade Player of the Year in high school. You got to be pretty damn good to have all those accolades. And then, of course, he goes to Oklahoma. Dylan Gabriel's the starter, his first season there. His second year, he's the starter, but they go 6-7, 2-6 in the SEC. He transfers to Auburn. Last year, they go 5-7, 1-7 in the SEC. So this is obviously a guy who had all the gifts, had all the talent and the pedigree.
His last season in Oklahoma, they went 5-7. I'm fine.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
So, what I'm trying to say is a guy who really had all the gifts, all the accolades, everything you could want from a kid from Denton, Texas, he just has not been able to put it together, frankly, as a college starting quarterback. And then you got Alex Orji, a guy who's more of a mobile dual threat, a guy who can run a 4.7, he's 6'3", 235. And really, we don't know if he can pass the ball and he can be a play-in, play-out starting quarterback for every down. You know, and that's the big question that is facing this team right now. So to me, I think my first and best guess of what I would like to see, James, is that because Dan Mullen is this quarterback whisperer, a guy who's worked with the likes of Dak Prescott, I think you would probably want to see if he can get his hands on a juicy 5-star pedigree quarterback and see if he can make magic work with the guy who has yet to find it in all of these top-tier school stops. He hasn't been able to make it work with the Sooners, hasn't been able to work it with Auburn Tigers. Now he's got to see if he can make it work with the Rebels.
So, and I didn't do... I'd have to look this up, but did Jackson Arnold commit to play for Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, or did he commit to play for Brent Venables? Because
Venables was the coach when
he was
there,
freshman. So
but it could have been.
That's something I would need to look up. That question being, Lincoln Riley is a good quarterback coach, is a quarterback whisperer in his own right. No, and I'm with you. I think Jackson Arnold should be the starter, and he will be the starter. Now, this whole, Dan Mullen hasn't named a quarterback yet, what's going on? He's not going to show his hand to Memphis if he doesn't have to. He did this last year against Idaho State, too, where he didn't name a starter between Calandria and Orji, and they both played on the very first drive. And I would be willing to bet that first opening series against Memphis, we're going to see the same thing, where it's going to be a mix of Jackson Arnold. Maybe he'll come out on the first play, and then they'll move to Alex Orji, and they'll mix in a little QB run. That would be what I would anticipate for the Memphis game. But I think the meaningful snaps in the game, when it comes down to it, nitty-gritty time, gotta have it, you're going to see Jackson Arnold in the game.
Here's my problem. my problem is, and I've said this on Silver State Sports Live, is that if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks.
This isn't that.
But to me, how, you should know who the guy is.
They know who the guy is.
And
the guy is Jackson Arnold. They know that.
I don't love
That's why they're paying him like $600K or whatever.
I don't love the optics of not establishing that. And I don't like the herky-jerky mentality so much of not knowing who your quarterback is and bringing in a guy, bringing out a guy. Like, I don't know. To me, I would think that Jackson Arnold, with his pedigree, he should get the chance to play in this new look Mountain West with Dan Mullen as the head coach and see what can happen. And if he loses the job, he loses the job. To me, I can't help but think and wonder if Dan Mullen's not coming out to say that. I mean,
he did the same thing last year. I know. And they both played, and they won a lot of games until Alex Orji got hurt against UCLA, and then it was Calandria's full-time gig. And I don't think this is something where it's like, we're not really sure about either of our quarterbacks. I think this is, number one, not naming a starter is gamesmanship by Dan Mullen, point blank, period. And second, they have two guys that they truly do really like and have differing skill sets, and Dan Mullen knows that he can utilize both of those to manipulate defenses, especially in the Mountain West.
But there's a difference between
it's not the NFL.
But there's a difference between a gadget quarterback and your starting quarterback, and that's what I'm trying to gather.
I think Alex Orji is going to be more of your gadget guy.
Right.
And Jackson Arnold's going to be your starter. That's what you're going to see.
Right. But when we've seen that in years past, all different versions in college and in NFL level, I mean, you still have a starting quarterback. If Dante Moore was the starting quarterback of UNLV, would Dan Mullen still say we don't know who our quarterback is?
Probably.
That's weird to me. That's, isn't that strange? If Arch Manning was getting,
I think if you have two quarterbacks you really, really like,
you don't say you have a starter. You just say, hey, we don't know.
Yeah. Nobody needs to know except everybody in the room. Everybody knows. I would be more than willing to bet that everybody inside the UNLV locker room knows that Jackson Arnold is your starter. But Dan Mullen knows that if he doesn't have to name a starter and keep Memphis guessing ahead of that week 0 matchup until that first quarterback steps on the field for the first drive, he's going to do that. It's just gamesmanship. Everybody in the locker room knows that the starter, and when it comes down to it, nitty-gritty, is going to be Jackson. That's how I would.
You and me might be. We're on different sides of the spectrum for this argument today on Sound Off Sports, and that means it's good, guys.
That is good.
Coming up after a short break, we got to talk more about this whole dilemma. Is it gamesmanship or is it stupid? We'll see after these words. All right, welcome back to Sound Off Sports. We're breaking down the dilemma of QB1 for the UNLV Rebels ahead of Week 0 against the Memphis Tigers on Saturday at Allegiant Stadium. Dan Mullen, head coach, second year in, not naming the QB1, saying that he doesn't even know the first play that they're going to run at this point. And
gamesmanship.
James is saying it's gamesmanship. I'm saying it's stupid. A lot of different ways to look at this, but let's go to our first call, James, on this issue and hear what somebody at home has to say.
So Jason Kelly here. Love the Rebels. Excited for this football season. Interesting time we are in. A 9-3 season where the Rebels do not win the Mountain West Championship is a complete and utter failure. So there's a lot of expectations. If you don't win the Mountain West Championship, it's a failure, especially with the decision to relegate ourselves to a weaker conference. In terms of Jackson Arnold or Alex Orji, the answer is Jackson Arnold. Alex Orji, not super reliable health-wise, has dealt with injuries a lot throughout his career, but is a very good option. I think the Rebels quarterback room is solid, just like it was last season. I wouldn't expect Jackson Arnold to be what Anthony Calandria was last season because that was just, Mountain West Player of the Year. That's really hard to replicate. But Jackson Arnold has talent, and I think under Dan Mullen, who, got Tim Tebow to back, national champion, just an amazing quarterbacks coach, I think we can trust that Jackson Arnold should be able to do good enough for the Rebels to allow their big offensive line and Jet Thomas to really control games in the rush game. But big season ahead. Got to win the Mountain West Championship. playoff, that's probably unrealistic to hold them to that standard, but you better win the Mountain West, because if you don't, the egg that will be on Eric Harper's face and the university will be not so great.
All right, great call there from Jason Kelly. Appreciate you, man. Yeah, a lot to break down there. I mean, of course, Anthony Calandria is a guy who was the Offensive Player of the Year for the Mountain West Conference last year, goes now to Nebraska, where he's going to be the starting quarterback there, kicking out Dylan Raiola. So we know Anthony Calandria got to the apex of his career under a guy like Dan Mullen. To me, a Dan Mullen, as Jason was saying, I mentioned Dak Prescott, of course, Tim Tebow as well. Yep. I mean, there's all these guys. If Dan Mullen is a QB whisperer and a guy who is craving an opportunity to get to the next level, right? Going 10-4 last year, 3 straight appearances in the Mountain West Conference title game, championship game, losing to Boise State all 3. Now Dan Mullen in year 2, he's looking to take a big leap, a big step. And to me, he probably saw Jackson Arnold as this guy who, hey, hasn't really gotten it done, is a 5-star prospect, a guy who was Mr. Gatorade Player of the Year for football.
Yeah.
This is a
5-star prospect.
I mean, a guy who has the pedigree and has all the tools. If I can work with him, maybe I can get this program to the next level under him. So to me, to not name your QB, there is no gamesmanship there. Everybody knows it's going to be Jackson Arnold.
It's all about Memphis. If he doesn't have to let Memphis know who his starting quarterback is, he's not going to do it.
You think Charles Huff, the new head coach at Memphis, has no clue who's starting?
No,
he's like, I don't know how the game.
Is not that dumb.
You game plan for both. It's not that much gamesmanship.
I don't even think he's going to game plan because he knows they're going to see both. But he's going to game plan for exactly what I've been saying, that Jackson Arnold will take the meaningful snaps. But if Dan Mullen doesn't have to name anybody and make it obvious, here's our starting quarterback, he's not going to do it. Hey, Memphis, here's what we're going to run on the first play. Here's our quarterback for the first game. If he doesn't have to do that, he's not going to do it. He's going to let that show up on tape going forward. But if he doesn't have to show any sort of hand for week 0, why would you?
Couldn't there just be as much gamesmanship if he said Jackson Arnold's the starter and then the second play of the game you bring in Alex Orji to run a play? Why couldn't you do that?
Sure, you could, I guess. But I'm saying,
to me,
we already know Jackson Arnold. We already know Alex Orji's going to get his snaps.
See, to me,
right? But Arnold's going to take the meaningful ones when it comes down to it.
To me, in athletics, for any team, if it's the NFL, if it's college, if it's the NHL, if it's the MLB, if it's the NBA, whatever it is, you have to have an identity as a football team, and you have to be able to understand that we're going to beat you playing a game that is ours, and we're also going to try to match up to you and execute things regardless of your game plan. And that's got to be something that comes from internally from the program. So you can't just the entire season be trying to
You're not for the entire season.
Other
this
teams.
Is strictly a week 0 thing. This is strictly a week 0 thing because there have been no games played yet whatsoever. Once we get this week 0 game off the board, is he going to officially name a starter?
Why are all these other schools doing it? Why did Vanderbilt just name their starter?
Because they don't have 2 that they're going to use. UNLV is going to use 2 quarterbacks all season long as they're healthy.
Right.
Orji as
but
a gadget
Orji's
guy. Other
a
guys
gadget
don't have
player.
That. He's not necessarily just a gadget player. He's not as good of a passer of the football as Jackson Arnold. But they feel good about Alex Orji stepping in and starting if he has.
So is your
He's an elite number 2 option at quarterback, in my opinion. Vanderbilt, these other places that have named their starter already, Tennessee, that's because they don't have a second option that they really like as much as the first one. And I think Dan Mullen is just playing off that luxury that he has where he's going to play both quarterbacks.
What's your response to if you have 2 quarterbacks that you're in love with, then you really don't have one?
I think that is just a nonsense kind of phrase that people spit out these days. And I think maybe in some instances it is true. I don't think in UNLV's situation, where they truly do have 2 guys that they like and they're going to utilize because they have different skill sets, Orji on the ground, Arnold to throw the ball when they need to have it. That's not 2 quarterbacks not having one. That's truly just having two guys that you like.
What if in all your years as a Yinzer, when Ben Roethlisberger was the starting quarterback, they must have had a backup quarterback they liked enough? Why didn't they? Why wouldn't Mike Tomlin be like, hey, you know what?
Because it's the NFL, and that's not how it works in the NFL. There's 32 teams in the NFL, right? You're playing a higher level of football. You're not going to, and when you have a Hall of Famer playing quarterback for you, you're not going to split his time.
But if there was gamesmanship, I guess, I mean.
This is the college level versus the NFL. We're not going to compare Jackson Arnold to Ben Roethlisberger.
But I'm just saying.
That's like not. This is the NFL versus the Mountain West you're trying to compare right now.
I'm just saying. I'm not trying to make comparisons between both. I'm just saying the point is when you know you have your guy, you know you have your guy. And to me, this has to signal that one of two things. It's either gamesmanship or it's either that Jackson Arnold is not the quarterback everybody thought he could be. And that is a big consideration here. And that's the big point I'm trying to make.
Now,
is that,
you couldn't.
And that's all I'm saying that I'm worried about. Because if he was this guy who's Gatorade Player of the Year, 5-star recruit, couldn't get it done at Oklahoma, couldn't get it done at Auburn, and he's got this crappy record in the SEC of football, which is the pinnacle of college football, then to me, maybe instead of gamesmanship, this is Dan Mullen saying, oh no, we might not have the starting quarterback that we thought we were going to have.
If Jackson Arnold was the 5-star Gatorade Player of the Year still that he was in high school, he wouldn't be at UNLV right now. He would still be at Oklahoma.
But I guarantee you Dan Mullen was hopeful in the sense that maybe there can be some
The man threw 6 touchdown passes through 10 games last year.
I know.
Dan Mullen knows what he is.
But maybe he thinks, every coach feels this way, James.
They think they can fix him.
Every coach feels that they can fix and be the guy to unleash the potential in that player.
So he looks a little like Bo Nix. But I don't know if I'm just watching the Auburn Uni or what.
And seeing him throw the football in some of our,
talent.
He's got a great arm. I love his mechanics. I mean, he whips that ball in a special kind of way. But all I'm trying to say is, and I wasn't trying to compare the NFL and Ben Roethlisberger. What I'm trying to get at is when you know what you have, there's a confidence associated with that. And maybe this is a signal that he can't commit that we don't know. And maybe Anthony Calandria really popped off. And it just was one of those things that after Orji went down, he went down. So to me, I think a lot of people are outside looking in thinking, hey, we got a quarterback, 5-star pedigree from Auburn and Oklahoma. He's got to be the guy. This could be the guy that take us to the next level. And maybe because there is no commitment and there is no QB1 and there is a gadget thing at play, maybe the situation isn't as strong as we thought it was going to be at this quarterback spot.
In my opinion, it's cut and paste the same exact situation as last year where we had a guy like Anthony Calandria. I don't know what his recruitment looked like out of high school, but he was kind of an unknown.
He played at UVA.
Right. UVA.
Out of high school,
right. I don't know quite what his offers were, but he was kind of an unknown coming from UVA to UNLV. We knew Alex Orji, big name, starter at Michigan. He was coming in too. Dan Mullen didn't name a starter. And again, Idaho State rolls around. Calandria plays the first play. Alex Orji comes in for the second play, 3 for 3 on that drive. He runs him right down the field for a touchdown. They split time, more so Anthony Calandria, until Alex Orji got hurt, but there was a place for it. And we knew who the starter was after week 0. And to bring this all around, they're only playing the we don't know who the starter is game for week 0. Just so they're not pointing, hey, Memphis, this is who our starter is. Whether or not Memphis is dumb enough to fall for it, I doubt they are. But internally, they know that Jackson Arnold is the guy, and there's a place for Alex Orji to make plays and help the offense, and he's going to do that. But Alex Orji is going to be your gadget quarterback, for lack of a better word, and Jackson Arnold's going to get the meaningful snaps when it comes down to it. We need to go to break. We won't wait too long here.
We got to go to break. We'll be back after these words.
You're watching Sound Off Sports, sponsored by Silver State Schools Credit Union.
All right, my next guest is Elaine Marmel. She is the founder and president of the Mrs. America Pageant Association, and along with her late great husband, David Marmel, started the Victor Awards, which ultimately became the ESPYs. Tell us about the Victor Awards and what it was like to be alongside your soulmate creating such an incredible, memorable event.
Well, David Marmel was a sportsman. There is no question about it. And his love was, I must say, baseball, and a true fan of the game. His vision was there were awards for all the other shows, the Emmys for Broadway,
the Tonys.
TV, the Tonys for Broadway, the Emmys for television, but there wasn't a real sports award show. There were a couple that tried, Cavalcade of Sports, some years back, and with high celebrities like Gregory Peck, I think,
okay.
or Charlton Heston, but it only lasted a couple of years. And so he just felt he took the reins, went to Sports Illustrated, okay? They loved the idea. We put together a ballot.
For the full conversation, go to our YouTube page at Silver State Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in to Sound Off Sports. Give us a call, 702-855-3502.